Milling Through History presents The Last Czar. Nicholas II of Russia is very famous, as we have known him in history as being the last Tsar of Russia. However, most people do not necessarily know the true story behind the man. And while there is a great deal to tell, we're going to try to break down his life into some of the more important highlights in order to explain who this individual in history was. Nicholas Romanov was born May 16, 1868, and was actually related to many of the monarchs throughout all of Europe. On March the 1st, 1881, Nicholas became the Tsarevich, which means he was next in line for the throne. And while he was never properly prepared to become monarch, the main reason for this was because his father, Alexander III, believed that he himself would have an extremely long reign as monarch. As such, by the time Nicholas would be ready to become Tsar of Russia, he would have eventually gained knowledge and experience through watching how his father had done things. Instead, his father would die at a relatively young age, and on May the 26th, 1896, Nicholas was crowned Tsar of Russia, completely unprepared, and therefore putting the Russian state in a rather difficult position. One of the things that really made his reign so difficult for many Russians is the fact that Nicholas was convinced he was divinely chosen to become the ruler of Russia, and as such, his deep belief in the divine right of kings led to a very misguided understanding as to how his power should be used as monarch, and also whether or not the people supported him. He felt that just by being around, people would naturally love him, when in reality, Russia was undergoing massive changes, both politically and economically, along with the rest of the world. With the dawn of the 20th century, Russia would go into war against Japan, and as such, by engaging war with them, Nicholas believed that on paper, the Russians should just very easily walk all over the Japanese and defeat them, and this would help to aim in allowing him to spread the Russian Empire further into Asia. Instead, the Japanese put up a much stronger fight, and as a result, this would go ahead and force Nicholas into coming up with a less than desirable peace, and in 1905, he would have to reorganize the Russian government in order to allow much more legislative freedom towards the people. The result of this is that the new legislature, referred to as the Duma, was something that Nicholas did not at first enjoy, and it took at least 3 tries before he could finally get a legislative body which he could at least work with. Now, one of the things, though, that Nicholas had dealt with was the fact that his own heir to the throne, Alexei Romanov, had suffered from hemophilia. As such, there was a great deal of concern that the young crown prince might not actually live long enough to adulthood, and thus put the Romanov family and their dynasty in great jeopardy. However, their own personal family concerns would have to take the back seat as the First World War would break out in 1914. The one strength Russia had going their way when it came to the First World War was their massive army, as they could easily fill upwards to 5 million men almost overnight. The problem, though, was while they had the bodies to go ahead and fight a war, they did not have the resources. As a result, the Russians, once the war broke out, could easily go ahead and defend a 3-front war, as they would have to fight the German army, the Austro-Hungarian army, and the Ottoman army all at the same time. 2 out of the 3 fronts, they were able to hold back their enemies and sustain a stable front line. But every time the Russians fought the Germans, they were getting annihilated. As the war continued to sour for Russia, home front sentiments went against anyone with a German name, and also ire began to draw its way towards the royal family, as the Tsarina Alexandra was originally German, and many people did not think she was properly Russian. As the strain of the war became too great for the Russian people, protests began throughout Russia, and eventually even the military would turn against Nicholas II. On March the 2nd, 1917, Nicholas would abdicate the throne, and his family had attempted to go into exile. However, there was no real easy way for them to get out of the country, as nobody wanted them. As such, they were placed under house arrest by the new Russian government. When the Bolshevik Revolution occurred, any hope for the royal family to get out of Russia almost immediately came to a close, and the Bolsheviks would immediately begin moving the royal family from one part of Russia to another, in order to prevent any potential sympathizers from rescuing them. On July 17, 1918, the family was taken down to the basement of the home that they were being imprisoned in, having been told they were going to be transported yet again. This time, however, guards would enter into the basement room and execute the family. While history itself does not know exactly the full timeline of events that occurred on that particular night, it is generally agreed that Nicholas was the first one to be executed. The family would be buried in unmarked graves out into the Russian countryside, and their bodies would not be discovered until 1979. On July 17, 1998, a full 80 years after their deaths, the family was interred in St. Petersburg, and has become a source of contention as to whether or not within the Eastern Orthodox Church they should be considered saints and martyrs for Russia. Now be sure to click like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History, and be sure to leave comments below for future episode ideas, and be sure to look at our suggested reading page.